this work. It's been extremely important. And a big thank you to Lindsay and Marianne and their team for doing such amazing work with the PDG. So I think a round of applause for everybody is warranted. Well, great. Well, I think we need to just first quickly, one order of business before I introduce Marianne, is that we have meeting minutes from our November meeting that were sent out prior to the meeting and were included in the materials. And so we need to approve those meeting minutes. So do I have a motion? Okay. A second? Great. And all in favor? Aye. Aye. Any opposed? Great. Gavel, and we'll go ahead and move forward. So I'd like to turn over to Marianne Snyder.
Hi, Melissa. Good morning, everyone. I was really hoping that we would be able to announce this morning that we've heard from the feds about our PDG application. But it's not Christmas yet. No. And still no word, Lindsay.
I got 2 emails and had a heart attack, but those were about the no consequence.
Okay, for those of you on the phone who may not have heard, Lindsay said she got 2 emails, and she almost had a heart attack, which is not allowable. But they were both about the no-cost extension. I really am happy to be here this morning, and I'm sorry that I haven't been able to be a bigger part of this group. This is a very, very busy time for us, and those of you who know state government well, I had my joint budget committee briefing yesterday afternoon, so I was panicking, I was late, and so I'm probably going to read, but it's heartfelt. So thank you, Melissa. I appreciate the opportunity to recognize the great work that has occurred over this last year. We've already accomplished so much, and I'm just beyond excited about getting this PDG grant in the next 3 or 4 years. I can't believe we made it. Today marks a major milestone for this project as we share the key findings from the needs assessment and the results of the strategic plan. This, of course, would never have been possible without the help of great partners, including our vendors. So I want to say thank you to the really brave team from the Colorado Health Institute for taking on what really was an impossible task. Michelle Lee, Nina Bastian, Alex Caldwell, and the rest of the CHI team. The breadth and depth of this needs assessment is incredible for the few short months you had to complete this project. It has already proven useful to our team, and we're excited to begin sharing the data and findings captured in the report shortly. Your work has embodied the spirit of PDG. Thank you for your innovation, your fresh perspectives, and collaboration with all of us. I also want to specifically recognize our strategic planning team, Sarah Daly at Child Trends, Jennifer Stedron, Morgan Yankee at Early Milestones, and Carrie Germeroth at Marzano Research. Again, you've completed a lot of work in a very short period of time, and we appreciate all you've done to formulate Colorado's path forward to support children and their families. The preschool development grant is rooted in increased coordination and collaboration. I want to thank Melissa, Colleen, and their teams at CDE for their ongoing support as we implement TDG. A special thank you goes to Angie Galanos of the P3 office. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and work with your team on this project, and I look forward to continuing to support greater alignment between our offices. And next, thank you to the PDG team at OEC itself. Many of you have had the chance to work with Kristen Lang, Angela Benzerke, and Lisa Schluter. Lisa is still with us after a large scare this week. You might want to ask Lindsay about that. Their fresh perspectives, curiosity, and passion for supporting young children, families, and early childhood professionals were certainly foundational to our success. Also, Teresa Pei and Joanna Barreras for supporting the operations component of this work. There's just so many moving parts, and it really does take a village. And finally, thank you. This subcommittee truly makes Colorado shine brighter. Over the course of a few short months, you helped us gather inputs from more than 10,000 individuals. That has to be a record. Colorado has to be leading the way, I can't imagine. Over half, 5,265 to be exact and counting, came from families of children with children ages 0 to 5. You also ensured that over the course of a few months, we were able to complete a comprehensive needs assessment and develop a robust strategic plan. By bringing new partners to the table and having these partners contribute month after month, we believe Colorado has been able to really embody the charge of PDG in each of our deliverables. Thank you for your ongoing participation. I look forward to our work ahead with you as we implement the strategic plan with federal money. Stay tuned. Thank you.
So thank you, Mary Ann. And you'll notice that every table does have a microphone on it, so if you do need to speak or ask a question, please make sure you use that microphone. So we're going to turn this over to Lindsay Dorneman to review our needs assessment, including the 12 pressing needs and opportunities.
Good morning. I echo everything Melissa and Mary Ann said this morning, so thank you for sticking with us, and I'm really excited to share what we have discovered over the last several months. Again, always starting, just kind of grounding with what we were hoping to accomplish and continue to accomplish with PDG. Timeline, so we're in December. This morning we received confirmation that we do have a no-cost extension. So year one activities will continue through February of this year. Today we're sharing both the needs assessment and strategic plan. Our goal is to forward these items to the ECLC on December 19th for their endorsement so that we may submit them to the Federal Administration of Children and Families on the 20th for their acceptance. Once we receive federal acceptance of the final documents, we'll be releasing those reports. So our timeline really is looking at January for release of the full needs assessment as well as the strategic planning report. We're thankful for the ECLC Executive Committee who are partnering on this work as well as the full ECLC. So we anticipate an official release in alignment with the release of their annual plan towards the end of January. And then as noted, again, we do have that formal approval to operate through February. So I want to go back a few months to remind folks really what our charge was under the PDG so that we have a full understanding of the deliverables that resulted from that work. So the purpose of PDG really was to analyze the landscape of the early childhood care and education mixed delivery system and implement changes to that system that maximize the availability and quality of ECE options for low-income and disadvantaged families, especially those in rural areas, across providers and partners. Also to improve the quality of care, streamline administrative infrastructure, and improve state-level ECE funding efficiencies. While PDG has a strong focus on early care and education, they also wanted our scope to look beyond, so to include other programs and other systems that provide supports to children and families, knowing that these also contribute to the quality and the learning and the development of young children. So a lot of the work that we did under PDG really falls into that center white box. But again, Colorado and the feds recognize that those other systems play a role in supporting children and their families, and so the documents that we're sharing today should reflect that. Excuse me. So PDG required states to conduct a statewide birth through 5 needs assessment of the availability and quality of existing ECE programs, including programs serving the most vulnerable or underserved populations. Within that, we had 11 domains that had to be addressed in our final needs assessment, and those are outlined here. Within each of these domains, our federal partners provided us guiding questions. We added a few of our own, but really we wanted to make sure we were providing definitions of what our system is, of the populations that we serve, including those that we define as underserved or vulnerable, making sure that we identify counts of children who are receiving service or who are on wait lists, the quality and availability of ECE programs that we provide, the status of our facilities, barriers to service, and transition supports that currently exist or are needed. So to accomplish that, Colorado contracted with the Colorado Health Institute in July. So I think when you see the report, it's important to remember that they had 4 months, and it is incredibly impressive what they were able to produce in that time. When we first began working with Colorado Health, we asked them to address 5 questions, really the who, what, where, and why of early childhood access and quality. To do that, Colorado Health Institute used both qualitative and quantitative approaches. So the parent survey, which yielded over 3,400 responses, focus groups and key informant interviews with program administrators and other stakeholders. They collected administrative data from probably 30-plus sources. I keep looking at Lisa Schluter, who was instrumental in this work. And then also they developed a child care model that would allow us to provide estimates of current utilization and need around early care and learning services. So today, a lot of what I will be sharing will be rooted in the parent survey and the responses that we collected through that. So some information about those respondents. First, looking at demographics. So we see that the majority of respondents were between the ages of 25 and 44, so really targeting those parents of children under the age of 6. Most of our respondents were white, and many came from the metro area. In terms of respondents from county, the largest response group came from Denver at 11.5%, followed by Jefferson County, El Paso, Arapahoe, Adams, and Larimer. So moving on, we identified key populations that were called out in the Every Student Succeed Act legislation, the Preschool Development Grant funding announcement, and Colorado's application, and really wanted to ensure that we were collecting voices from populations that may be underrepresented in a lot of the work that we're doing. And so we feel like the parent survey helped us accomplish that by collecting voices from the populations you see here. These were not all collected through the parent survey. We had to do some additional work through targeted focus groups. So again, thinking about some of the work that the Child Trends Early Milestones and Marzano research team did was incredibly helpful in making sure that even where we didn't hit families with the parent survey, we were hitting them with focus groups or through other means to allow us to capture those voices and incorporate it into our work. So as a result of CHI's work, we have 12 opportunities for Colorado's early childhood system. The findings from the needs assessments I'm presenting today, and that will be in the final report, are not listed in order of significance or priority. However, the first 6 really do touch on early care and education systems, with the exception number 5, which does encompass almost all early childhood programs. So thinking about the information we learned from the parent survey, under finding number 1, we learned that 97% of parents surveyed cited a care setting's ability to provide a safe and supportive environment, and then 94% of parents cited a positive child caregiver interaction as the 2 major reasons for choosing child care. This is exciting to us because those really do point to high quality being important to families. The next set of attributes included learning environment, socialization opportunities, flexible scheduling for parents in terms of what they would want to see in that care setting. When we address barriers to families, the top barriers that they cited to accessing the childcare setting of their choice included cost of care, availability of care, location, and the ability to accept childcare subsidy. So I don't think there are any surprises in here. However, it's great to be able to point to this through the parent survey and really validate what we've been thinking all along. And finally, over half of parents surveyed, about 53%, stated that they had to turn down a work opportunity in the past year because they could not find or afford care. So really not only thinking about the impact on children, but their family as well. Looking at our second finding, we found that 23% of parents surveyed cited the inability to accommodate their child's language as a barrier to engaging in their preferred child care arrangement. It is important to note that the survey was only provided in English and Spanish, so we're only looking at those populations within that data point. Additionally, on average, about 46% of parents reported culturally relevant information and programs as being a major driver when choosing care. So it is important to families to be able to access culturally responsive care. This number grew to 59% across all respondents of color. And finally, 34% of parents cited the inability to accommodate any special needs of their children as a barrier to engaging in the preferred care arrangement. So that really speaks to that third bullet, in which families of children with special needs have compounded challenges when seeking the care setting of their choice. Finding 4, no surprise. And a lot of that information and a lot of the feedback we received through focus groups with providers aligned with the findings of the 2020 workforce survey. Under finding 5, we did find through focus groups that early care and educational professionals do not always represent the diverse children they serve, including one parent who put it very plainly, we want diversity. Children want to see people who look like them. Under finding 6, the diverse sorry, I'm like losing my place. So finding 6, which talks about provider support, a lot of this information aligned with the outreach and engagement done around Senate Bill 63, which looked at barriers to family and child care homes. Through that, we did find that nearly 50% of surveyed family and child care home providers found licensing application confusing, and 12% did not know where to get help. So that's just one example of where there may be a barrier to engage with child care licensing. So overall, this really speaks to access and availability of formal child care settings, which we define as licensed child care. The child care model developed by CHI provided some additional insight, which states that approximately 113,000 children under age 5, or 34% of Colorado's population of children under age 5, are currently in licensed care settings. Again, this is an estimate of utilization. However, based on the parent survey and other sources, if parents had their choice and there were no barriers to accessing the child care setting of their preference, an additional 39,000 children, or a total of 152,000, would be in licensed settings. It comes as no surprise that the most impacted population in this is infants. And so based on the model, we would see, based on the model, currently only about 33% of infants are being served in licensed care. And so that, again, goes back to of how many families would prefer to have their infant in the licensed child care setting. Only about 33% of that number are currently being served, about 5,000 when we look at real numbers. All right, moving on to the next 6. So under finding 7, this is really about parents' ability to understand what's available to them and to be able to access services. So when parents were asked through the parent survey what services are locally available when needed, medical and dental care were prominent. About 95 and 91% respectively of respondents indicated that those services were available. In contrast, parent knowledge of early childhood programs is limited. Between 7 to 19% of parents surveyed reported a range of child development services were not available locally, and another 35 to 65% had no knowledge of existing child development support. One parent, in response to this, stated that many parents aren't aware of the resources available and rely on word of mouth to find programs and services. So this is identified as a significant gap that the state hopes to fill with funding through the Preschool Development Grant and through the Strategic Plan. Looking at number 8, addressing transitions. Parents who were surveyed or participated in focus groups shared that children transition best when they have a nurturing environment and when their teachers and child care providers understand the child's previous care and education environment. This is a repeated theme throughout all of our stakeholder outreach, including that with early care and education providers and other early childhood professionals. However, they note that systematic support is currently lacking. Under finding 9, expanding access to early childhood mental health consultation, what we found was a mismatch of supply and demand. Through the parent survey, 52% of parents rated ECMH services that address challenging behaviors or social-emotional development as extremely or very important in the care of their child. The same percentage, 52%, were not aware of locally available ECMH services. Looking at finding 10, again, I don't think there's any surprise that rural service delivery presents a perennial challenge. Offering early childhood programs and services that focus on specific subpopulations are especially difficult for implementation in rural settings because of both reach and scale. Finding 11 and 12 really focus on data usage and availability. So within finding 11, the discussion really is that current data systems cannot provide unduplicated counts of children or parents participating in early childhood programs or receiving services. Additionally, these systems cannot assess additive benefits derived from engagement in multiple services at the child or family level or assess long-term outcomes for children and families. Within finding 12, we find that longitudinal data that follows children through age 5 and potentially beyond would allow program administrators and policymakers to assess and invest in programs and services that improve outcomes across the entire system. However, it's difficult for many of our systems, especially within the Office of Early Childhood, to speak to each other to meet those needs that would support a lot of our decision-making under items 11 and 12. So in addition to what we found, we know that there's still more we need to learn. So the Needs Assessment Report analyzed 18 programs, services, and funding sources to identify solutions to address the many needs that we just discussed. Nevertheless, there's more work to be done to understand the depth and complexity of these issues and the state's early childhood system. Therefore, we are recommending that future assessments, whether they're done under the Preschool Development Grant Renewal project or otherwise, look at the following topics. The needs assessment is close to completion, so I expect to have a final copy in my inbox by 5 p.m. tonight. However, we are planning to submit that to the Federal Administration of Children and Families before we publicly release, should we need to make any adjustments to that report. So with that, I am available for questions. Is it quiet for Lisa?
I'm really interested in. Thank you. I'm interested in better understanding what parents we have. I'm really interested in the 75% of parents. I wrote it down where it was. Working parents. So, does it challenge us to shift our assumptions around the percentage of children who have all available parents working that comes from the American Community Survey? We often say that's 65%. It hasn't changed for years, but I wonder about that 75%, data point that you noted before you got to the 12 items, or maybe it was one of the first things. I just wonder if that gives us, this might be a question for Jennifer and her team. I wonder if that tells us anything about the real landscape of how many children actually have all available parents working.
Yeah, looking at actual Colorado level data, it's really in line with the American Community Surveys, and looking at those trends, we haven't seen an increase, but there is probably some additional learning that needs to be done around that to test the desires of parents who are not able to enter the workforce to see if that number would be higher. So that is something that we could look at in the future, definitely. JC.
I'm curious to know if there's any analysis of how well the demographics that you shared at the beginning match the demographics of the state.
Yep, so we recognize that the survey likely did not hit all of the populations, and the actual responses were not in alignment with the actual demographics of the state. Therefore, we did go through a weighting process to better align to that. Yep. Scott?
Thanks for your presentation. Great job. Really appreciate everyone's work. A few questions or / suggestions for future needs assessment considerations. One is interested in quantifying the workforce shortage for all birth to 5 children's services. Second, quantifying the facilities shortage, again for the same population. And third, examining the extent of coordination between the community-based early childhood settings and school-based early childhood settings, and especially in regard to the transition times, but in general too.
Can you expand on that last one?
Yeah, in terms of preschool delivery, preschool services, and times when children are transitioning from preschool to kindergarten, how are school districts coordinating and vice versa with child care programs and Head Start programs? How well is that going? And also in terms of delivery of preschool programs under Colorado Preschool Program and other services.
Yep. And thanks to your input previously, we were able to add questions around that to our evaluation plan for the strategic planning activities.
Are those some areas you think might be good to examine if you get the new one?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say within the required domains in the needs assessment, there were definitely domains that we were not able to do a fairly deep dive into. So thinking about workforce, so our target for really data collection was families, and that was driven by our guidance from our federal partners. And so that's where we invested a lot of our efforts, not necessarily into workforce. But we also were planning to build on the great work that was done behind the Workforce 2020 plan and the data collection that was done within that project. But facilities is one area where we really did not have an opportunity within our needs assessment to ask questions and dig into what barriers exist or what challenges or what investments would need to be made to address the need for increased capacity. So that's definitely something that should be addressed in the future. I would say we were lucky that we had Senate Bill 63 that allowed us to ask some questions, but again, that's a pretty limited scope. Any other questions, or Amanda, anything online?
Yeah, let's do that. So thank you, Lindsay. And thank you, everyone. So we're going to take a quick break. Those of you who are online can imagine how delicious those donuts are. So we'll take a quick break. We also have certificates of appreciation to pass out to folks who are here in the room. Those that we don't have in the room with us today, we'll make sure we get those to you. So please help yourself because those donuts won't eat themselves. So this will be an opportunity for everyone to practice with their microphones at your table because it's fun speaking into microphones. So we'll just do a quick round of introductions of folks in the room. I failed to do this at the beginning of our meeting, and I apologize. I'm going to start over at the table where Lindsay is, and then we'll just go around the room to make sure you're speaking into your microphone.
Lindsay Dorneman, Office of Early Childhood.
Karen Schneider with Healthy Child Care Colorado.
Kelly Bowes, Denver's Early Childhood Council.
Lisa Maddox, Expanding Quality and Infant Childhood Care in the Office of Early Childhood.
Angie Galanos, the Preschool through Third Grade Office from Colorado Department of Education. Laura Knudsen with Parent Possible and the Colorado Home Visiting Coalition.
Jennifer O'Brien, Early Childhood Workforce Development at the Department of Ed.
Emily Bustos, Denver's Early Childhood Council.
Erica Newton, Colorado Interagency Coordinating Council.
Pamela Harris.
Woo! Mile Higher Early Learning.
Anna Jo Haynes, Mile High Early Learning, and one of the co-chairs of this committee.
Bill Jager, the Colorado Children's Campaign.
Chris Miller, Denver Preschool Program.
Heather Hanna with the Early Childhood Council Leadership Alliance.
Christina Walker with Clayton Early Learning and Raise Colorado Coalition.
Joyce Johnson, Colorado State Library, Growing Readers Together Project.
Good morning. I'm JC Montoya Price with the Raise Colorado Coalition and the Colorado Children's Campaign.
Angela Bentecker with Office of Early Childhood.
Lisa Schlitter, Office of Early Childhood. Good morning, Alice Murphy with the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, Children, Youth, and Families Branch.
Amanda Pelletier with the Early Childhood Leadership Commission. I'm going to read off who's online for us. We have Alicia Limcombe Embry, Amber Bilby, Anne Marie Neal, Brittany Lane, Catherine McCarthy, Kathy Fabiano, Cheyenne Hellman, Corey West, Don Alexander, Denise Fletcher, Dr. Joseph, Dr. Sylvia, Erin Mason, Eva Jankowski, Heather Blanco, Heather Hanna, who's also in the room. Thanks, Heather. Joining us twice. Heather Jesse, Joanna Barras, Karen and Bowden, Christy Kolkowski, Linda Meredith, Lisa Jensen Thompson, Logan Manasaras, Murray Hefferman, Naomi Stebson, Nicole Rail, Nina Baxton, Naomi Aguilar, Rachel Hubbard, Ruth Ann Dempson, Sarah Daly, Shannon Greeley Lincoln, Stacy Petty, Sue Lowe Miller, Susan Connors, Tracy O'Brien, and if I missed you, I'm sorry, I'm running down a list, so.
Well, thank you for doing that, and thank you, everybody, for doing the belated introductions. And also, speaking of belated, I did want to just recognize all of the work that Amanda is doing to support the commission during maternity leave. Yeah, Amanda, you're doing a great job, so thank you very much. All right, so this is the Lindsay Dorneman Show, Part 2. Lindsay has another presentation for us on the Colorado Shines Brighter Strategic Plan. So I think that break was really for you to be able to rest between your two parts. So thank you. So thank you, Lindsay.
So hello again. So moving into the next major deliverable under PDG, we have our strategic plan. So similar to the needs assessment, the PDG required us to develop or revise a strategic plan that supports and facilitates collaboration and coordination among existing early care and education programs in a mixed delivery system. This plan had to focus on establishing and maintaining an ECE system designed to support all children and their families, particularly those identified as most vulnerable, through the needs assessment conducted by the state. In addition to meeting the 9 requirements on the screen, the strategic plan had to include 3 elements. The first being goals, action plans, and performance indicators that provide a strategic path forward for establishing or strengthening the early learning B-5 mixed delivery system. Second, input and ongoing involvement from stakeholders directly impacted by the mixed delivery ECE system, which is why we continue to work with our PQA partners and families. And third, an analysis of the gaps and weaknesses noted from the needs assessment process and action plans to address those areas for improvement. So Colorado's approach to the strategic plan included contracting with Child Trends, who in turn partnered with Early Milestones Colorado and Marzano Research in July. They were tasked with developing a 5-year strategic plan. Within that plan, we really did ask our partners to prioritize family outreach. As a result, the strategic planning team collected over 1,200 survey responses from families and spoke to more than 100 parents and caregivers participating in focus groups. Additionally, the strategic planning team identified over 100 stakeholder groups, and many of these partners were engaged through the PQA subcommittee. The stakeholder survey distributed in October, and a series of 13 focus groups and 18 key informant interviews conducted between July and about September. Finally, 38 existing state, regional, and local plans and reports were reviewed for alignment with the Early Childhood Colorado framework. So you may recall the office requested that folks from PQA share existing plans, so they were put to good use and led to the ability for us to understand the landscape of early childhood, existing and planned strategies to address any of the challenges or needs that exist and where those gaps are that the PDG strategic plan could then fill. Additionally, the strategic plan really did need to be responsive to the needs assessment. And so as we were building the plane, we were flying it. And so I think that our strategic planning partners and our needs assessment partners had a really great relationship that allowed them to not only share data, but to have continuous conversations as we were developing findings and then addressing those within the strategic plan. So as a result, we have the table you see in front of you on the screen, which shows how we tracked the 12 findings from the needs assessment and then aligned them within the goals of Colorado Shines Brighter, which also frame the Colorado Shines Brighter strategic plan. So it's important for me to always share that the strategic plan and the PDG renewal activities, while aligned, are different. So the statewide Birth Through 5 strategic plan really is designed to be this bigger, comprehensive roadmap for Colorado. The timeline of that plan is 5 years, beginning January of 2020, wrapping up December 2025. Implementation leads for the strategic plan go way beyond the office. So we'll be working with the ECLC, the governor's office, state and local agencies, other stakeholders to ensure that that plan is implemented. Again, going back to how that plan was informed, we of course used the needs assessment as well as stakeholder outreach and alignment with what currently exists or planned for Colorado. And finally, that plan really is aligned to the Early Childhood Colorado framework. So you may remember in October when our partners presented, they showed how the objectives tied back to the framework to make sure that we were achieving and working towards those same goals. But also the strategic plan really needs to be responsive to the larger state framework. So the current plan draft that we'll go through today is reflective of not only the needs assessment and all this work, but also thinking about the governor's agenda, pending budget and legislative items, not only this year, but in the future. The PDG renewal grant, while those strategies are embedded within the statewide strategic plan, those strategies should be wrapped up within a period of 3 years, aligning with the funding that we would receive under PDG. The Colorado Department of Human Services is the lead agency. However, we would be working with state and local partners to implement those strategies. But ultimately, the office would be accountable for achieving those particular strategies. The approach to informing the renewal application was very much the same as the strategic plan. However, some of the framing or the guardrails for those strategies were defined by building on our initial grant activities as well as the federal scoring criteria. So making sure that we get the money and then have the opportunity to as we implement activities. So prior to this meeting, everybody should have received a document that looks very much like this. And you should have access to that. I believe they were printed for today's meeting. There was a fabulous 5-minute video that was sent out to help walk through this. I'll do that again at a very high level. So ultimately, we'll have a strategic plan report that goes beyond this document that will address resourcing, governance, go into depth on how we arrived at this plan, and then thinking about the path forward for implementation. Today, we're really focusing on the strategies that will be contained within the plan. This plan is, again, aligned with the 6 goals of Colorado Shines Brighter. So there's 6 sections that match each of those goals. Underneath each goal, we have a set of objectives that were derived from the Early Childhood Colorado Framework. So that's where we're going to start seeing alignment back to Colorado's guiding framework. Underneath the objectives, we then have our strategies. So this is these are the action steps we're going to take to make sure that we achieve those objectives underneath each goal. The objectives have some icons attached to them. So those that have a little piece of paper in front of them are the strategies that are going to be hopefully resourced and implemented under the PDG renewal grant. And so we won't go into depth on those today. Those were discussed at the last PQA meeting, and we can kind of consider those as things that'll happen and move forward once we receive that funding announcement. Instead, today we're going to focus on the strategies that have a little wavy hand in front of them. These are additional strategies that resulted from needs assessment and stakeholder feedback that we weren't able to include within our renewal grant, either due to timing or because we needed to identify some additional champions and resources to be able to adopt those. Many of these are going to be strategies that would extend the 5-year strategic plan period. And so really today our goal is to focus on those and to make sure those are reflective of shared understanding of things that Colorado should do. All of the strategies in the document you had in hand were shared with the ECLC Executive Committee on November 19th. And so it reflects the input from that group. Following our conversation today, we will have a discussion, I believe, led by Melissa, and hopefully a vote to be able to forward this plan on to the full ECLC for endorsement. So on the screen, I actually have pulled out all of the strategies that have a little wavy hand. And so we can walk through those today. Again, if you have questions, feel free to stop me as we're talking. Otherwise, I do have time reserved at the end of the presentation for questions as well. So the first one is 1.1.5, which addresses barriers and strategies to implementing a unique child identifier to enable data-informed decisions concerning child outcomes. So this is really building on House Bill
1364.
Thank you, 1364, Scott, who was one of the originators of that. So revisiting that and understanding how we can continue to move forward, to think about unique identifiers and outcomes and how we measure that for Colorado. The second is utilizing data to identify opportunities for supporting the broader early childhood workforce, including home visitors, coaches, early childhood mental health consultation professionals. So looking at our needs assessment, we know that there are needs to address this workforce. However, I think there's some additional work to be done in discovery, as we discussed earlier. And so this strategy would allow us to do that. Next is promoting integrated and preventative maternal and child physical, behavioral, and oral health, exploring current models, including Head Start, and the maternal child health priorities of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. So using the newly released, I think it's now released, maybe it's still pending, CDPHE assessment around these activities to inform strategies moving forward. Next is determining core early childhood and family support services to be made available in each county and create a plan to address current gaps. So this really comes from stakeholder feedback on how we can ensure that those services that are most important to children and families are available regardless of the county that they reside in. And then finally, enhance ongoing coordination and collaboration across state agencies, including those agencies that are represented by the Early Childhood Leadership Commission. So in the spirit of PDG, continuing to align, coordinate, collaborate across agencies. So under Goal 2, we actually do not have any new strategies outside of the PDG. So we can move on to Goal 3, which is maximizing family knowledge, engagement, and support. So while the PDG did support a no wrong door activity initially and will continue to do so in years 2 to 4, one of the aspects that is of interest to the Early Childhood Leadership Commission, specifically their Communications Subcommittee, is also looking at a parent awareness and engagement campaign that would allow coordination across the state and creation of tools, perhaps some resources to be able to do some marketing to increase parent knowledge and engagement. The next is investigating family attitudes and decision-making around choosing ECE programs. So again, this is pointed out in one of the potential next steps for the needs assessment and doing a deeper dive to really test what parents are looking for and how their decisions are being made. The next item is exploring opportunities for the ECLC to lead specific strategies with a focus on incorporating input from families and frontline professionals, including child care providers, ECE professionals, K-3 professionals, early childhood mental health consultation professionals, and home visitation professionals. So again, this is kind of a nice opportunity to broaden some of the work that the ECLC may be doing or issues that they would look at regarding these services. Finally is building capacity of local early childhood councils to engage family leaders, including consultation and engagement with local family resource centers and Head Start programs. So how do we strengthen that tie between local ECCs and families in their communities, as well as create additional family advocates. So moving on to 4, this is the goal where we probably have the most robust addition of strategies outside of the PDG. And I think that given the focus of the early childhood framework on equity and access and quality, this really is important. And so that's likely why we're seeing some additional strategies underneath here. So the first is increasing the availability of developmental screenings and referral processes in appropriate ECE settings. The second is looking at opportunities to increase access to mixed delivery ECEs with an emphasis on serving infants and toddlers. Next is developing a policy analysis tool to examine how current and future programs and policies affect the availability of or could support additional funding for infant care with a focus on dual language learners, families living in poverty, families living in rural areas, and families who have children with special health or developmental needs. Some of these on this page are being pulled from Senate Bill 63, so those familiar with that work will see a lot of connects within this section. Next is really looking at cross-training on ECE regulatory and policy changes with the Department of Human Services, Early Childhood Councils, local agencies, Offices of Economic Development, and professional associations. So how do we better align and ensure folks are on the same page as to what those requirements are to support our early childhood providers and potential providers. And then finally, looking at how we equip local and state business leaders and business support organizations with resources and knowledge to support ECE through possibility of public-private partnerships. So I'm glad Nicole is on the line, really thinking about EPIC and other partners who can help strengthen relationships with the business community to support our providers' access and availability to care. Moving into the other two strategies under Goal 4. So the first one should not be a surprise, but looking at expanding and enhancing affordable mixed delivery pre-kindergarten for all Colorado 4-year-olds. So thinking about our governor's agenda and how we want to reflect that in our strategic plan. And then next is analyzing eligibility and family income thresholds to ensure equitable access to multiple services for family with young children. So thinking about the cliff that some families face, thinking about perhaps universal enrollment and applications, how can we do a better job around that work? 5, again, the goal around strengthening business practices, a lot of the thought around this was to better align with Senate Bill 63 and the great work that was done to formulate that strategic action plan. So some of the strategies are proposed underneath this that aren't necessarily captured in the preschool development grant renewal activities are exploring how business consultants and navigators can address specific challenges for pre-licensing and startup requirements for child care providers, as well as supporting livable wages. Next is studying and implementing financing strategies to incentivize greater access to care, specifically looking at weekend and off-hour care and care for children with special health or developmental needs. And finally, studying the effect of local regulations on the availability of licensed infant and toddler care and family child care homes. So direct tie to our Senate Bill 63 work. And Goal 6 is improving the quality of early care and education environments as well as the workforce. So activities outside of PDGs that we would like to include in the plan include exploring reciprocity in credentials and licensures across states, beginning with those in Region 8, so that's our federal region of states, and between countries, beginning with those countries with populations most present in Colorado, and providing supports for transcript review and other approval processes. So really thinking about some of those members of the workforce that we're not tapping into but are qualified, should we be able to address these barriers. And then finally, exploring strategies to ensure worthy and livable compensation for ECE professionals. So that probably gives a few folks heart palpitations because that's a perennial challenge, but it's pretty essential and pretty important to include in this plan because it is a priority for Colorado. So that really reflects outside of what we plan on implementing with PDG, what's being included or hopefully included within that strategic plan. So I know we moved through that fairly quickly, but there's definitely time for questions. Concerns? Lisa, you look like you have or Jennifer, you want to start?
So under objective 6.2, develop and retain the work,
Under the objective 6.2, develop and retain the workforce, and then I'm reading 6.2.4, reciprocity. And I'm hoping that embedded in that is really coordinating licenses and credentials within Colorado, you know, as a beginning.
Yeah, and I think some of that is coming out of the early childhood workforce work groups that are happening under your one.
Right, that's what I'm thinking of
Yep,
there.
and so some of the other strategies within this, so thinking about the PDG strategies that are part of the strategic plan, right? Those are a continuation of those year one activities, and so fully intending to implement those recommendations.
Okay, good, thank you.
I'm kind of clarifying question that these are written as they are, and you do not want editing on them. You want at the end of this day to pass these forward to the ECLC as they're written, but we'll have some discussion, or are you seeking additional language in those waving hands?
Well, do you have a concern or a way or a thought on expanding, or?
I love identifying opportunities for supporting, and I also wonder where there's opportunities for recognizing the support we already have in place, because a lot of times we move forward with something exciting and then learn, we're actually already doing this, we just didn't elevate it.
I think that's a helpful addition. Thank you. Heather?
What number are you referring to?
You know, I drew my attention to 1.1.6, which I understand is under using data, but the rest of the sentence follows, identify opportunities for supporting the broader early childhood workforce, and there's a lot of opportunity to identify what we're already doing that supports all of those consultative roles so that we can elevate those things and scale them up, in addition to using the data.
Yeah, so there may be a couple opportunities in here to suggest that we're building on what exists, or perhaps even framing in this larger strategic plan, Jennifer.
I just want to make sure I get, if there's a wording change, that I get that wording change, and I don't think I get it yet. Specifically, what's the suggestion there? To elevate current, like, existing programs and support new.
I would say, Jennifer, identify opportunities and current state.
Great. Okay, Heather.
Yes. So I'm actually looking at the additional details, which are super helpful, and it looks like this is where that alignment, you're kind of showing where all the alignment in current or existing or new systems might be. So I'm actually looking at 1.2.4, local organizational capacity, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's no change. I just have a question.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So I'm really excited to see the last sentence that in 2022, you plan to expand the triennial ECC evaluation and include a cost analysis of resources to fully fund the local early childhood system. Well, which is phenomenal. I'm just curious why we're waiting until 2022 when we know we've just done the triennial evaluation and we're doing this capacity assessment. It just seems like it's a ripe opportunity in alignment with PDG. And then does that also include cost analysis within the FRC evaluation? I don't know what that looks like on their end. And what does the role of ECLA and possibly FRC look like in helping to support those efforts, knowing our roles as membership associations? And maybe FRC is separate. I just want to make sure, since we're so aligned, that that's included.
Yeah, so operationalizing the strategy would look like work that was done similar to some of the early childhood workforce work groups this year. So our intent is to bring in a process management vendor that would facilitate discussions, that would look at the resultant recommendations from the organizational capacity, involving councils, involving FRCs, involving those member organizations, so ECLA, FRCA, in helping us unpack those recommendations and understand which ones would be worth moving forward. So hopefully that addresses one of your questions. And then in terms of the cost analysis, the reason for waiting until the triennial really is in alignment with resourcing, so making sure that at that point we have the resources available to do that. So it was just, to us, it felt like a natural alignment to expand the next triennial evaluation to include that. I also think that there is a benefit to doing that, because if there are recommendations implemented over the next few years as a result of that organizational capacity, those would then be included in that analysis.
No, I totally hear you on that and see where that.
Yeah, it would be great to know now, right?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would, just knowing that we just did an evaluation and that you're in the midst of an organizational capacity evaluation. It just seems like a natural fit to do that as you have this current data along with the PDG. So I certainly understand resources, but would implore you all to think innovatively about how we might, even if we're not able to do that until 2022, how we might work together to figure out what that is, because ECLA has been really interested in doing something like that. Resources to be able to do it, as I'm sure you know, it's quite costly to do that very well. So we would love to think about that with you as we lead up to 2020.
Definitely. Thanks, Heather. Scott, you look like you got something brewing there.
Yes, it's constant brewing boiling. Two things. Well, one, I'm not sure, the second part of Heather's question about, did you ask also, you're doing some kind of analysis with family resource centers too?
Yeah, so the organizational capacity analysis and then the work that we would be doing through work groups in 2020 and beyond would include family resource centers.
Yeah, thank you. And then also just to amplify Heather's point there on councils, we know that there's a new, cost allocation formula. There are major changes to state resources to a variety of councils. And it'd be good, I just want to kind of amplify her point there that, and understanding your timeline on 2022, it'd be good for us to be paying attention to those cost impacts and analyses going through these next several years, and not just waiting, okay, now it's 22, we'll do this.
Yeah, and I can...
It's an ongoing thing.
Definitely, and I need to go back and talk to Stacey Kennedy, who's leading the organizational capacity work right now, to understand how costs are being evaluated within that capacity analysis, and if they are, because that could be a good starting point prior to the triennial. That report is not expected until the end of the project period in February.
And I'll just thank Scott for bringing that up and echoing that, and just knowing that so much of this work is going to be rooted in local communities, especially early childhood councils, and knowing that their funding is dramatically decreasing. I don't want us in 2022 to be looking at a much smaller system where then we're having to build it back up from the near state representation that we currently have. So absolutely, I'll beat the drum.
Definitely, and I would say, in the PDG renewal activities at least, any activity that included a council component, we heard councils loud and clear that we cannot ask them to do things without resourcing. And so each of those activities did include resources that would support implementation at a local level.
That's fantastic. And I'm sure you have lots of cheers online right now.
Yes, we tried to be very thoughtful. Anyone else? Is there anyone online? Oh, sorry.
So my question is, it's sort of a question and sort of a statement. So on strengthening business practices, the 5.1.1, I just want to make sure that when we think about business practices for early care and education providers, that it's there's a different element to it than they just need business practices. Since we're dealing with people's lives, children's lives, their parents, caregivers' lives, disenrolling a child because a parent isn't paying tuition is detrimental to the child and to the parent. And I just get concerned that there's not a recognition, I guess, of sort of the special services that we provide, and not just a traditional sort of approach to business strategies, I don't think is really appropriate.
That's really helpful, Pamela. Thank you.
I guess it wasn't a question.
No, but that's appreciated, and we are partnering with a national center that does provide training and guidance around strengthening business practices specifically for the purpose of providing childcare. And so I look at Angela, who's in the back of the room, and will be significantly involved in that activity. And so I just want to make sure that she's listening and she's very sensitive to that. So thank you again, Pamela. JC?
Hi, I just wanted to add on the note of developing business practices that we have some really great local resources and people who are engaged already with this work, including Small Business Majority. So I think especially because we know how much face-to-face interaction helps, they would be a great resource, among others.
Yeah, and this is one of our wavy hands, so if they would love to be a champion around this, we would certainly welcome them to do so.
We'll go after them.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to note too is that the wavy hand ones will require some folks to be identified as champions to ensure those are implemented. We haven't done a lot around that right now, but it's certainly conversations that'll happen here as well as in the full ECLC over the next few months.
Have a comment?
An online comment to please remember the rural areas regarding supporting the development of business practices.
Yep. Yeah, and one thing that maybe is not clear in this plan was definitely clear in our renewal application is that with the findings of the needs assessment, we're going to have a new ability to really be able to target resources and strategies to the communities most in need. So thinking about scholarships or microgrants or some of these activities such as enhanced coaching, the needs assessment is going to drive where we prioritize those activities, knowing that we probably can't resource a broad statewide activity initially. So I think that's a great point, and just know that that is on our radar. So some additional things to note, unless you have additional questions. So we did include in the PDG renewal application the opportunity to review and refresh the strategic plan annually. So that would include opportunities to do some additional stakeholder outreach and to make actual revisions to the report that can be shared out each year. And so this is designed to be a living document, but I do think that in partnership with everybody here, with our vendors, with families, that we have a really strong foundation to begin working from starting January of 2020. All right, well, thank you guys. Hopefully this is really a reflection of all your great work this year, that you see yourselves in it, that you have some ownership over this, because we really did take to heart everything we've learned from you over the last, well, we kicked this off in February, so the last 11 months, and we couldn't be more pleased with the outcome in this deliverable.
Thank you, Lindsay. And Lindsay has been, great at giving us updates, and also just keeping in mind that there are many, many, many people behind this plan. So thank you. So now is the time for the committee to vote on recommending this plan for ECLC full endorsement. So is there a motion on the floor? Thank you, Pamela. A second?
I second.
Thank you. So all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. So this will go forward to the full ECLC at next week's commission meeting. So thank you very much. Good job, everybody. Our last thing on our agenda, we're running ahead of time, so if anyone wants to be really long-winded, now would be a good time for that. But we do have an opportunity for public comment, and I don't know if anybody signed up for public comment, but Amanda will go ahead and grab that. But in the meantime, we can start with member updates. So if there's something brief that you would like to share, please go ahead and grab the microphone and provide your update. Are we all in a sugar lull after the, no updates at the moment? All right, Amanda, is there a public comment?
Unless anyone would like to sign up.
So, I'm not seeing anybody jumping in to go ahead and take advantage of an extra half an hour here. So, our final agenda item is looking at next steps, and so we have agenda topics for future meetings. So, Amanda, is there anything that you would like to let us know about in terms of agenda topics that you're aware of for future meetings?
Sure. I will hand this off to JC to share her agenda topic at the next meeting.
Hi, everyone. One of the many hats I wear is serving on the steering committee for the coalition working to pass paid family and medical leave in Colorado. As part of that, we are educating everyone and trying to bring people into the coalition. And as early childhood champions, y'all are a very important group. We'll be talking at the next meeting about how paid family and medical leave intersects with the goals that you all have. When you look at the third area of opportunity from the ECLC, we know that that is around family self-sufficiency and economic security. So I'll be here along probably with Hunter Rayleigh talking about paid family leave.
Thank you. And then Amanda has something to share?
Hi, all. I forgot to announce that the Senate Bill 63 report is now available on both the OEC and ECLC website, and I will send that around with a follow-up email. And then our next meeting is on January 10th, and we will be back here at the Colorado Health Foundation. So, sounds good.
So we do appreciate the Colorado Health Foundation hosting us. This is a wonderful facility. I think I'm just going to start hanging out in the lobby on a regular basis. But so keep in mind that you can find all the meeting materials, PowerPoint, and webinar recordings on the ECLC website on the PQA subcommittee page. So thank you, everyone. And it looks like we all have just a little bit of extra time in our day. So hooray for that. So good job, everyone, and happy holidays, everyone.
I didn't know 30 minutes ago. Right, exactly.